Today on Leader Podcast, episode 27, I am joined by my former boss, colleague, and now client, Adam Clark, who's now the CEO of IMRA Surgical. It's a surgical training company reshaping how surgeons train worldwide. Let's get into the episode. Welcome to episode 27 of Leader Podcast. And today is a special day because I have my friend, former colleague, former boss, and client, Adam Clark from IMRA Surgical here on Leader Podcast today. Adam, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Steph. Happy anniversary to you and your husband, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just telling Adam, I'm like, you are the reason why I am not at happy hour with my husband right now, but I am willing to do this. He's coming from Melbourne, Australia. And so there's a huge time difference and we are making it happen today. But thank you for the acknowledgement. Yeah, 25 years. I'm excited. My husband and I are both excited, really.
We went from working together in multiple different roles, and now
yes.
You partner with us and do great work with our company and help us in so many different ways. You just can't get rid of me, Steph.
And you can't get rid of me. It's just gonna continue. Okay, well, on that note, let's talk about briefly how we know each other. I think it's pretty obvious. We both worked at Intuitive. But even then, after both of us left Intuitive, which by the way, on the record, Adam was one of the best leaders I've ever worked for, bar none, period, end of story. And just had a really motivational style to him. And so I learned a ton from Adam and we worked really well together at Intuitive, but also following both of our departures from Intuitive, we reconnected when he had left, and I'll let him tell his whole story, but he went to another country and continent, and basically we reconnected right around the time I launched Tribe, and he was one of my very first customers, which was interesting for him, a great learning opportunity for me. But that's how we know each other. What else do you recall from that?
Yeah, look, I was so delighted when I got to Intuitive and had the benefit and pleasure of leading the West region for all that time. But getting to have people like you and Tim Matthews and Chris O'Hara and that whole group of folks, and then developing others around us and all the people that we hired together to mold. It was such a special experience, right? From that time period of 2013 to the time, in 2021, 2022. What a growth run and phase built by great teams of people. I mean, I think about our time together at Intuitive. We sold cutting edge technology, but having an opportunity to work with you and other people was really the highlight of my time there. We're blessed with leadership from the top who set the standard, and then I think hired really well. And now those people are getting promoted and running the company and doing well. That's as a leader, I think that's the best you can want for your team to see that happen. And you've built, as you built some of the best teams in Southern California when you led that region for such
a lot of them are still here and now leaders of the West, which is always great to see as a former boss. Is like, what are they doing with that, right? And one of them's actually my backfill, and then one of them's a director now, and a couple others are managers. So, I mean, that was a team effort, obviously, but yeah, it's amazing to see.
You remember what I used to say when we interview together and we hire these people? And I'd say, look, if we can't look back 4 or 5 years from now and say that day that we met at the, LAX airport, or, at the Burbank Marriott or wherever, if we don't look back and say that was a great day, then we've both made a bad decision. And that was advice given to me by one of my mentors early on. And I always ask that question and talk to the candidates about that. And I think seeing these, younger leaders really coming into their own, it should give you a lot of positive vibes, Steph, for the culture that you created and left behind.
Thank you for that. And on that note, by the way, I don't even know if you know this. Do you know Nicole Kent, who I know you and Tim had interviewed? She's now my old role. She's now the
Oh,
manager of Orange County. Yeah. So what a win, and we hired her basically fresh out of college. And you know the infamous interview. And but she had that, the moxie that we all look for as hiring managers. We all look for that like fire in the
and not the
belly.
traditional background either. I mean, I remember you
Exactly.
had asked me and said, "Look, this is not the typical
This
profile of what we would
not the
hire
profile.
for."
Yep.
But she's got it factor, I think, is how you
It.
described it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
it was spot on. She's continued to grow and advance us again. So many of them have. So
Yeah.
exciting times.
Tell me about your leadership journey, your style, and kind of what brought you to current day.
Well, my background for the audience is pretty straightforward. I spent time in the military, and coming out of the military, I wanted to do something to give back. I thought I might have wanted to been a doctor or something in the medical field. Got started with J&J early in my post-military career, then worked at Medtronic for a very long period of time and had a ton of opportunity in that organization. And I test drove a DaVinci robot, and that I don't know what happened. It was like the greatest salesperson in the world sitting behind the console of a surgical robot. And I had an aha moment, and I said, I don't know what
What it looks
you know
like?
what all of these things are
Yeah.
necessarily, but I know this has to be better than any other way of operating, and this is the future, and I want to join. And so then I started my career at Intuitive. I came in as a VP from the outside, which doesn't usually happen at Intuitive.
Mhm.
I spent 8.5 years there, and then my career took a pivot. I had gone through some health issues and some other things in my personal life, and decided I wanted to sort of reset and
Mhm.
moved to Australia and fell in love with an
Where
Australian
you
woman.
had worked before, like a little
I had worked
context, you
here in the past, yeah, and so I
yes,
love this
yes.
country. If you've never been, I encourage everybody. This has got to be a bucket list place. It is
Mhm.
the land of milk and honey for sure. It's like if England and California had a baby. That's that's what Australia is like. It's a beautiful people and culture and uh, topography, and it's just an amazing country.
Mhm.
And I was here for a hot second, and my founder, Professor Tony Costello, who's a world famous urologist, really started robotic surgery in Australia in 2003. He had a company here called the International Medical Robotics Academy. And he said, "Hey, look, we need a professional CEO, someone who understands how to train surgeons, why it's important, and coming in." And so I said, "Absolutely, sign me up." And we went out to dinner with his wife Penny and Professor Costello, and the rest is history. We started with hardly any money in the bank, a few accredited courses for robotic surgery education, and a few contracts with the Royal College of Surgeons and a few others. And I sat down with them and I said, "Look, education is amazing, and it's a noble endeavor to help surgeons become better surgeons. And Lord knows the health system needs this globally. But I believe the future is in the replacement of live animals in surgical
Mhm.
training and
Mhm.
in cadavers. Cadavers are really expensive, hard to source, um, just a general challenge for people ethically sometimes to, you know, use a cadaver for test driving a medical technology, for example. And then live animals, there's pressure all around the world to stop killing pigs and sheep and dogs for surgical training. So we set out on a mission and we hired some chemical engineers, biomedical engineers, and we said we're going to create the world's most advanced and hyper realistic tissue that can eventually replace the need to use animals and cadavers. And that's what we've been working on for the last 4 years. It's been a heck of a journey.
It has been a heck of a journey. I've had the opportunity to kind of watch the whole thing evolve over time and, you know, kudos to you for just persevering too, I mean, starting from grassroots and bootstraps, it is tough. I mean, I know all too well. I started my own company as well. And it's tough, but you never lost sight of the goal, right? Which is persevere. We have a solution here that everyone needs. and let's just continue to focus on production and, all the various things that come up in the early days of a startup. And I got to watch you guys evolve into this major entity now. And I love seeing that. I love seeing the evolution of your brand and just kind of going from that grassroots ideology to now, you're serving massive manufacturers and hopefully soon, like in all academic settings. And just to endorse, I've been in both trainings of animals and cadavers.
Yeah.
The cadavers literally leave a smell on you that you can't get rid of for 2 to 3 days after the training. So it's not something that is fun. And I also agree there's just a weird factor to that. But also the animals, I mean, I'm not okay with that. And I'm not even one that's like a huge,
Yeah.
what's the foundation? PETA, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not a part of that. But when you think about it, if you have a solution that you can avoid slaughtering animals for training purposes. I mean, yes, if you need to do it for food or other reasons, I guess, but for something that can be now done with a synthetic that is hyper realistic, and trust me, when you see their videos and their website, they have a huge video library of all their products. Anyway, I won't continue down that road of pitching IMRA Surgical, but I've gotten to see the fruits of their labor and also just the really cool factor of their models, their surgical training models. And, again, if I was working in surgical training or if I was even working in intuitive, I would 100% just put my fist down in any training environment that this is what we should be working off of, and no longer putting pigs down or animals down and anesthetizing them and mistreating them and then throwing them out to the pasture at the end,
Yeah.
right? It's just
And it's funny.
avoidable.
And historically, we've used those technologies to train surgeons.
Yeah.
Surgeons typically learn 3-4 different ways, right? Most
Mhm.
likely, they practice in a patient. You and I
Right.
know that's the secret of healthcare that nobody really
Yeah.
wants to talk about.
Yep.
But as you're a learning surgeon, you're practicing the patient. That's not ideal. Uh, then using cadavers and animals for all the reasons I mentioned before. But another reason why I think is synthetics haven't adopted because the technology wasn't there. They weren't
Right.
realistic enough, and so they
Right.
use these other things because they had to. There is an alternative now, and that's what IMRA is trying to fill that void. But if you think about it from a holistic educational perspective, it's a better way to learn because
Mhm.
you can use a progression based learning model with synthetics that you can't use when you do a cadaver. A
Yeah.
cadaver is a single episode learning experience. If I'm teaching you how to do hysterectomies and we go in, and if the cadaver is lucky enough to have a uterus still on the
Right.
patient and not have that removed 40 years ago from surgery,
Yep.
once you remove it in that one practice trial, that experience is over.
Right.
And so, and the same thing on the uterus on a pig is 40 centimeters or something crazy.
Mhm.
So it's not anything like it. It is live tissue, and these are voids. But when you use a progression based model using synthetics, you're able to train to proficiency. And so you
Yeah.
can start with a very simple model, master a task, and then you move to a bit more of a challenging model, and then you can move to a really advanced model, and all for a lot less cost. It's more ethical, it's cleaner, it's neater, there's no smell. So it's just a better way to train. And I think that's why the whole market and why all these companies are now working with us and asking us to, create bespoke models for them and to do these different things. But anyway, I'm very passionate about the
I
subject.
know, so am I, so am I. I mean, I'm very familiar with your brand, very invested in your brand, so I too, ditto your sentiments. And I would say, to go back a little bit, I agree. There's no shame in the former surgical training practices. We did what we did at that time because that's what we had access to, and now, I think someone in one of our conversations had said this. I don't think I came up with it, but as surgical training has evolved, as surgery has evolved, surgical technology, like going from an open to a minimally invasive laparoscopic and then all the way to a robotic advanced laparoscopic. And I'm sure there will be something after that,
Right.
right? But as surgical technology has evolved, surgical training was just kind of idle. It hadn't really evolved and matched spades with the technology evolution. And so I do think that is a powerful way to look at it. It's just practices are evolving, and I love the quote from Maya Angelou, and I'm sure I'll butcher it, but it's like, "When you know better, you do better."
Yep,
And so I think we know better now. We know that we can have a hyper realistic model that can be something that is a learning vessel for multiple people, both medical manufacturers, residents, surgeons that are going through a learning curve. All of the above can apply to your models and have a really equitable experience that they can get really good at without harming others,
that's
right?
right. And a better, more ethical way to learn, more cost effective way to learn. We've coined this thing with our partners in industry called sim to sin, and that
Mm,
is simulation to synthetics as a
mm,
replacement to using live animals in surgery. We're clinically validating this. So we're big believers at IMRA on the power of VR simulation. It really it allows you to have multiple tries and practice tasks and understanding hand-eye coordination, whether it's robotic or laparoscopic training. We think virtual reality's got a place, but it's not good enough. You don't go to the DMV and get your driver's license by sitting behind the wheel of a video game. And you've got to actually get in the car and drive. And in surgery, you've got to touch stuff, you've got to cut stuff, suture, etc. And so that's where the synthetics part comes in and really, solves this problem from front to back. And it really uses, I think, the way we used to train surgeons to proficiency. You were one of the best in your teams and really enforcing a strong training process where
mhm.
those steps were skipped. So often it does get skipped though, and again, we could fill these voids with VR and then synthetics as a solution to really ever having to fly someone to a pig lab
Yeah.
ever again. It's such a
Yeah.
waste.
Yeah, I agree, of your time and your money. Yeah, and I mean, most people have to pay for their training, depending on which manufacturer they're working with. So as you're onboarding new skill sets, you typically go to that medical manufacturer's home base. They usually have a whole building, that's dedicated to training, but there is a cost associated with that, both with time and money and
Oh, for
just
sure.
mental cognitive load, right? It's all of those
Time away
costs,
from their family, time away. When hospitals are trying to keep surgeons busy, now
right?
you're not in the operating room operating and generating revenue for the hospital or yourself, treating a
Yeah.
patient, helping a patient. You're flying across the country to go do that. The other thing for the med tech companies, I mean, think about the cost to them, not just the animal experience lab cost or the cadaver experience lab cost.
Yeah.
It's the flight. They're going to dinner the night before with the
Yep.
surgeon,
The
and you
hotels.
and they're not going to eat at IHOP. They're going to
No.
eat somewhere really
No,
good.
no. Half the hook to get them to train is you're taking them to the most expensive. I know because 'cause you've approved a lot of this stuff. You're taking them to the most expensive steakhouse, you with bottles of wine that are off in the back somewhere, and they're, I could name names, but I won't. But there are plenty of people who have a huge appetite for very expensive things. And so, yes, all of that comes into play when they go. And I think there's value in going to medical manufacturers' headquarters, but probably for other reasons than just, learning a skill. So, I think sky's the limit on where you guys can take it. Two things I want to double back on because I think it's always important to talk about. You've already really described the problem to solve, and that, we're trying to do cost avoidance, time avoidance, resource avoidance, a repeatable process. You know, with cadavers, you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. Right. So you get in there, they don't have a uterus and you're there for a GYN training. That's a problem. And you don't know
It
until you're
happens
there.
more often than you can imagine.
Right. So that's kind of the obvious problem, both for medical manufacturers, but even for residents, fellowship trained, all of the above. The other area that I think I really want to talk about is what makes you guys unique. So we're clear on the problem. I know there's other training companies out there that offer similar solutions, but I know there's a lot that's unique to IMRA. One thing that I thought was really cool, and I don't know how much you actually talk about this, but the hydrogel manufacturing and the origin story from the guy that worked on Lord of the Rings. Did I
Yeah.
make that up or did that actually happen?
No, no, that's real. Yeah.
So their products look like humans. And I mean, they really mimic like a physical body, but you can use energy on them. And you can also, what do you guys call it when you bring back to life the burned hydrogel?
Well, we say it's not quite self-healing, but
It's like
the
memory, right?
torsos have the ability to be healed um, at the end of a training day. Once you get probably 20, 30, 40 trocar holes into them, you can heal them with a heat gun, and it kind of
Right.
brings the material back to life. It's pretty spooky, kind of watching it, kind of like a candle, sort of coming back to life, sort of melting back together again. And then it's the next surgeon up the next day gets a sort of a brand new torso experience. It's sort of a traditional razor blade type of a model, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
their torsos, the models are designed to fit inside the torso, the hydrogel cartridges, if you will.
Yeah.
And those are single use, but the torsos are reusable. But it's amazing with regard to the team that we have here. Sean Patton, the guy you described, he's an industrial designer by trade, but he worked in Hollywood for a number of years, including on like movies like the Blade Runner and the Hobbit movies and those kinds of
Oh, it was
things.
Hobbit, not Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
But he'd made mannequins and all kinds of different things for the movies industry,
Yeah.
and came to us with this, and we got excited about this being sort of a vessel. So we have a dad bod torso and a Hydra female torso, and we've got an infant torso called Piccolo, and then we'll have more torsos coming on down the track, and then we what fits inside those is developed by Dr. Courtney Evans on our team, is our chief hydrogel scientist, incredibly bright scientist, along with Grace Burke, who you've met numerous times.
She's incredible.
She's
Yep.
incredible. The whole team, I don't want to mention them all because I don't want anybody to recruit them, but they are really cutting edge team working on hard science problems every day. That's what
Yeah.
differentiates us, right? Is that we're really focused on the science. And you asked, I think, what separates us is that, look, we're by definition at the IMRA Surgical. IMRA stands for the International Medical Robotics Academy. And we're the accredited provider of robotic surgery education here in Australia and New Zealand for the Royal College. We also work with the college in the UK and Ireland, and we're sort of an academic minded organization. So these models are not designed just to sort of make money. It's really to help surgeons be better. And so it all fits a part of a training pedagogy of improving surgical outcomes. We track that, we measure that, we study on that. We've got, I think, 8 clinical papers that we're producing right now, where we can show that this model of training to proficiency using these is a better way to train, and being clinically validated, I think, is one of the true differentiators that we do.
Yeah. I have one last thing on the products at IMRA, and then we'll move on to the next topic. But something we didn't highlight, but our leader podcast audience is a large amount of medical device reps. And again, thinking back towards my intuitive or even former employer days, what a huge hookup. If you're out doing a surgical demo, you can't demo on organics of any part on a surgical robot that's at the hospital. So you have to have a demo robot. I'm sure everyone knows that. And it's not just about robotics, it's about all the different surgical approaches. You can't use their actual hardware on most training tissue, but you can with your product, right? Do you want to talk about that at
That's right.
all?
Whether it's lap or robotic or any way really of
Any modality. Yeah.
teaching surgeons, yeah, for sure. I mean, I hear these reps sneaking chicken breasts and chicken
Yeah.
legs into the operating room. Like, man, if
Right.
you get caught doing that, is it worth it, losing your job or losing your company's contract with a hospital to do a demo? And
No.
there's these amazing synthetic alternatives
Yep.
that you can use through IMRA and buy them on Shopify. And, it's just a much better, more cost-effective way to. And the other thing I would make, I guess, is a pitch, which you'd appreciate, I think, is if you've been trying to convince a surgeon to use your technology for however long, and then you go to try to influence them to use your stapler, and you're going to use a piece of foam stomach or colon. Wow, I'm sure they've never seen that before. Everybody's stapler
That's
works
original.
on a piece of foam. Newsflash.
Mhm.
Blow them away with something that looks and feels like real colon.
Right.
Let them how to do an intracorporeal anastomosis,
Yeah.
with a piece of synthetic colon that looks and feels and acts real, you're much more likely to get a positive result. Same thing for pick an organ, pick a technology, laparoscopic or robotic. But trying to use the Whoville, uh, you know,
And
uh,
we're taping it inside
yeah,
and we're waiting for the doctor and he arrives early or she arrives early and then someone's holding it down. I mean, it's not a perfect science right now. So I think IMRA Surgical is trying to make a clean training experience for everyone. So whether you're a resident, you're a physician learning curve, or you're a medical manufacturer or you're a medical rep, all of the above can benefit from their solutions. And just to give another plug, I swear I don't get anything for this, but I just believe in it. Go to their website and go to their products page. And if you are a medical rep, you can order almost all of their products directly from their Shopify account. I know because we built that page. So we didn't build the Shopify, we built the website. But that said, I think it's such a cool hookup for someone that's out trying to make a living and trying to meet their number. And you no longer have to worry about having a realistic demonstration on their products and not having to bring in a demo product. There's just so much benefit to that. So I thought I would just give like a real life scenario. And then if you happen to be in Australia, they also have access to every robot that's made. So, I mean, even when we worked at our former employer, we didn't get access to any of their robots. So I think that's a really cool thing too, is that if you're a physician or surgeon looking at multiple robots or even medical manufacturer, you can go to their headquarters and actually get time on tissue with all of the robots that are out there.
yeah, we're a vendor agnostic education organization, and so the companies will argue and debate with customers and sell customers on what product is the best to use. That's a decision made by hospital administrators, surgeons, etc. Um, but we believe in giving them exposure to all of them. It just rises the tide, right?
Yeah, of course.
Robotic surgery is a better way to operate.
Yep.
Uh, a mentor of mine at Intuitive once said, robotic surgery is just better lap. You know, it's laparoscopic instruments,
The
but better.
advanced
You got
laparoscopic.
wrist. It's
Yeah.
got it's laparoscopic vision, but better. Your 3D 10 time magnified.
Yeah.
Open console, closed console, whatever. It's all better than laparoscopy.
Yep.
So make the move. And
Yeah.
and join that.
It's an open market, but I will say, it's not really a plug for Intuitive. It's just my personal belief. And since it's my podcast, I can share my own beliefs. So I would say, yes, there are multiple robots emerging in the market, right? I am a firm believer it needs to be a better outcome. I don't care what mousetrap you have. I don't care if you were a
Yeah,
robotic
100%.
competitor or the robotic, master themselves. If it's not providing a better outcome for the patient, it does not matter. It
That's
does
right.
not matter. So whoever can provide the better outcome, that's what everybody cares about, right? And so that's really what it comes down to. If you can't undercut the price or you have a smaller footprint or all the dumb features and benefits that people really focus on, it doesn't matter. It does not matter unless you're actually having superior clinical outcomes.
I remember I learned from you, and I still remember this stuff from 10 years or more ago. Uh, you're not buying the drill for the drill, you're buying it for the hole that it creates, right?
Yep.
And so if you're buying a technology, what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve? And make sure that you get that outcome, right? And that you're in the best position possible to
Yeah.
provide that. So we think that, again, our responsibility is to be agnostic. Obviously, each robot has some distinct differences and advantages. What Intuitive Surgical has done is nothing short of just
Incredible.
awe-inspiring and impressive in
Yep.
the technology that they have and that they've done. And there's some really interesting things. One of the benefits, I guess, of my job now is I get to learn a little bit about all the other companies out there and
Hmm.
see what they have and kind of get a peek under the tent. And I would tell you, there's some really cool stuff out there that's coming along. So that's good for patients, is the
Yeah.
way I think about it.
Yeah.
And patients will benefit. The UK, which is one of the hardest health systems in the world to sell medical technology, and if you've ever managed that part of the world, they've now made a burn the ships behind you, move. They're saying they're going to go completely to robotic surgery in the next 10 years. Think about that. I mean, from a place where they didn't do a lot of robotics to now making it sort of the standard of care in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
It's remarkable, but we're going to see that trend not just in the US. You're seeing that right now in Japan. You're seeing
Yep.
that India is blowing up in robotic surgery. All over the world, this adoption is accelerating
Yeah.
in many ways. And just follow some of the robotic companies' earnings reports and look at
Mhm.
their growth trajectories. So
Here to stay. Yeah.
it's
My
gravity, and if
old
you're arguing against it, you're gonna
It's a
fail miserably.
losing proposition. Yes, I agree. I've had this conversation with many, and again, I always go back to the outcomes. I will be your biggest fan if you have great outcomes. That's just the bottom line for me. Having been a robotic patient and also a majority of my family have had robotic procedures, it's all about the patient. If
That's
you
right.
can make a better robot that serves the patient in a clinically savvy way where they have favorable outcomes, then I'm all in. And until that day, I will die on this hill for intuitive. But everyone welcomes the opportunity to get better. Everyone has the opportunity, especially in this world of AI. There's so much advancement happening because we just have better brains behind these computers now. So it's all happening and I'm excited to see where it goes. But I do think you are the catalyst amongst this big robotic war that's happening. It's not even a war, it's just a technology race. And again, everyone that's listening that has a robotic product, just make sure it's better, right?
Yeah.
Better for the patient. Okay. Given that you're in this position and you also obviously work very directly with medical manufacturers, what does kind of keep you up at night? I could tell you what keeps me up at night. And obviously, I mean this more proverbially than literally, but what are some of the pain points that you're struggling with and or that you've faced in the past and that are behind you that you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you work at great companies like J&J, Medtronic, and Intuitive, like I had the good fortune and benefit of doing, one thing you never had to worry about is money.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's a challenge when you become a startup CEO is you've got to build a team, build a purposeful culture, where everybody's driven to success and
Hmm.
and for doing good, like helping patients.
Hmm.
Um, and and yet you've always got to be raising money, and that's been the hardest challenge, I think, for me. Is kind of a big eye opener is how much time you end up having to spend doing that. It's
Yeah.
not that it's not fun, it's just taxing, and it takes you away from the core mission. um, I think the uncertainty in the markets right now have made
Hmm.
investors think
Squeamish.
twice and
Yeah.
squeamish. People
Hmm.
want predictability in the future. And I do
Hmm.
think that things are pendulum swings. This is not a political statement. I think that things will start to normalize a bit. We're seeing this already playing out. Markets will open up. That's one of the challenges. I also think recruiting top talent and building
Mm.
great culture, that's just always something. Me, Steph, that's always on my mind. Are our people happy? Do they feel developed? Are they doing purposeful work that they're
Yeah.
inspired by every single day?
Hmm.
I feel like we have the right people on the bus, and and in the right seats. And we're always on the lookout for great talent, and,
Hmm.
and so we look for that in all kinds of different places. But that's a challenge at times too, because coming out of the
Hmm.
pandemic, look, things are different, and we have to
They
screen a
are
lot
very
more
different.
candidates
Hmm.
to get the A players than we did in the
Hmm.
past. And
Hmm.
I won't compromise. We're only going to take A players. We just had our second employee in the US just recently, and we're very fortunate and excited to have him join us. And it's just a function of you've got to go through a lot more work today
Yep.
to get people. I think young people today, particularly out of school, are sort of thinking differently about what they want to do. And do I want to grind? Do I want to
And
really have
what
to?
does the grind look like? Because they haven't really had to experience that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's
It
just a
could be
different
that it
environment.
was the same thing when we were growing up too, and we're just old now and reflecting on, like, our sleet and snow travels, and we walked through snow and back, I mean, it could just be that it's just another evolution, but I agree with you that hiring is really the biggest thing you can do. I mean, outside of fundraising and keeping the lights on, obviously, but hiring tough, managing easy is my favorite thing to say. I think I got it from some book, but probably a book you made me read. But I do think if you take the time strategically to get your candidates in front of multiple lens and multiple eyes and vet, and also trust your gut instead of selling yourself on someone. Anytime I've ever sold myself on someone over the interview process, I have regretted it. So go with your immediate gut, right? Wouldn't you agree? It's
I
like,
100% agree with
yeah,
that, and that's always suited me well. And I think going back to the Nicole Kent story, look, I mean, I remember Tim and you and I all talking about that when we brought her on. The You've also sometimes got to take a chance. If your gut feels right and you can't find red flags, and even if they're from a different profile, um, life's winners find a way to win. Greg Meehan, one of my mentors, told me that, and he was like, "Look, if you just hire somebody with the right DNA, you can teach them so much, and they can
100%.
learn through experience." Um, I think that's why CCEE always really resonated with me.
Yep.
Experience being the least important of the
Yeah.
four,
Yep.
because if people have energy and character and capacity, those are the things that really matter. But hiring is definitely one of the big things um, that I think about from time to time. And then the rest of the stuff regarding the business, I actually think is all within our control.
Yeah.
I can't control what other companies are going to do, or I can't
Mhm.
control what the markets are going to do. But what I can try to do is to try to invent things with our team that make a difference in the world and can change the game. And if we do that well, I think the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I think, if we go back to our references on hiring really good people, I also think retaining and maintaining and nurturing good people, keeping them happy, keeping them challenged, helping them. I saw something the other day and I won't remember it, but it was, always having a disciplined plan on moving up. And
Yep.
I think again, that's something I took from you was you were so big on development and always giving people eyeballs on the future
Yep.
and kind of almost dangling the carrot a little bit, which for me is super motivating. And I also use that with my team. I also think that's not coincidence that many of them got promoted because they're all, had goals that were beyond their current job, but they knew in order to get there, they had to do this
Yep.
perfectly. And
And that
once they've,
clarity on expectations of how to get there
yeah,
is so important. And
it's so important.
oftentimes people do a teaser with a carrot, but they don't provide the
Don't
pathway.
do the plan. Yeah,
And if you don't, it feels insincere eventually
totally.
to the person who's not progressing in their career, and they feel like, well, hey, you've kind of been dangling this carrot, but you didn't help me get where I need to go, and and I'm not seeing the promotions come through. I think about on this topic, one of the things that the CEO, a former CEO now, Gary Guthart of
Mhm.
Intuitive, said to me one time when we were going through a bit of turmoil in the business. And I said, "What are your thoughts about us at some point in time? We might end up losing some good people."
Mhm.
And Gary said something that really resonated with me. And I take this today to the company that I lead, which is look, we people are going to leave. Good people are going to get recruited. They're going to leave. No matter how great of company we try to create,
Mhm.
we will lose good people. But if they leave here, we should say to ourselves, did they leave and do they feel like they were developed? Were they
Right.
inspired every day? And did they
Yep.
feel like that their time working at, Intuitive at the time or
Yeah.
at IMRA Surgical today, if they leave, we have very minimal turnover at our company. But if we have, I always ask the question as my exit is, do you feel like you were enriched and you grew as a person in working here? Is it a good positive experience? And would you tell other people that working here is a great experience? And
Yeah.
if people say yes to all of those questions, you wish them well and hope that they, have success in their future career journey. And, things will always come back to benefit you in the
Yeah.
positive in that way.
Completely agree with you. We could have a conversation around leadership because I think it's something that you and I are very aligned on. As far as I personally have a huge passion about it, I just started a whole podcast about it, but trying to stay in the lane of med device. But I do think leadership is so important. And anytime I see, even if it's a client or even just someone that I'm looking at on the outside, if there's dysfunction in the ranks, it's usually a leadership issue. It always ties back to leadership or a lack thereof. And so anytime you're kind of looking down the barrel of dysfunction, question, is it a leadership issue? Because usually it is. And I've said it 1,000 times. People leave leaders, not companies. So I think as a CEO, you're right to have that be a priority. My last guest we talked about, he prioritizes culture. And I think both are really important to not only recruit great people, but to keep them. So, all right, well, we're coming out to the end. I know you're just getting your day started, and I have an anniversary to get to. So, okay, here are the 3 questions that I ask everyone. A mentor that you'd like to pay it forward to and why? A book that's made an impact on you. It can be fiction, nonfiction, business, non-business, I don't care. And then a superpower. And if you're going to try and pull the I don't have a superpower, I will fill in the blanks. So please
Ah,
don't.
no. Well, yeah, thanks. And I love this part of when you do this in your podcast because it's a good insight. I still quote and reference as a mentor one of the leaders that really had a profound impact on me named Greg Meehan. We don't talk as much today as we used to talk to. I mean, currently I'm being mentored by my chairman, Scott Tanner, who's been a really positive influence in my life. But Greg Meehan is one of the most amazing sales leaders. He's like sort of like Zig Ziglar of modern medical tech sales and whatnot. We worked together at Medtronic for a number of years, and I still hold him in such high esteem for all the things and the lessons that he taught me. There are so many. I can't like list just one or two, like, from Lindsay Atrodovic and working with you and so many other people. I have so many sources of mentorship from. And I think everybody thinks that the mentor has to be someone in a positional power
Yeah.
or above you, but not so. I've sort of been mentored by people that have worked for me in the past, where I pick their brain and learn from them, and we grow together through different things and experiences. The second question you asked was a book. Look, I'm a big fan. You know this because we all read these books together, the Jim Collins books, Good to Great. As a
Good to great.
CEO,
Got it
that
right
is
here.
a foundational book of
I don't know if you can see
for
it
me as a
on the
leader.
bottom there.
And
Yeah.
I would tell you the whole, sort of shoot bullets, then cannonballs. When you run a startup company, you can't just go and make big bets. You've really got to test things out. And so there's a lot of lessons in that book that really impact me. If people on this listening to this podcast haven't read that book, I know it's a little older now, but
It's
it's really
great.
a
It's
foundational book.
timeless. Yeah.
On a personal book side, I mean, I just read a book called The Happiest Man on Earth. It's about a Holocaust survivor who lived to be 101, and led with positivity his whole life. And, I'm really about that. And I think that ties into the superpower thing. I don't take myself too seriously. But what I think, if I have a superpower as a leader, is that I believe in the power of people and I don't care who gets the credit for their success. I want them to be successful because if they are, then the company will be successful, the business will be successful, etc. I think about that Ronald Reagan quote all the time, that he had a sign on his desk that said, there's no limit to what someone can achieve if they don't care who gets the credit.
That is
And
great.
and it's right, and it's the right way to lead and say, you know what, just helping people get better, helping customers with a problem, solve a problem, doing it ethically and in a positive way is the only way to go in my
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. That's phenomenal insight. And I agree with you and your superpower. Speaking of mentors, I know you didn't ask me, I'm not a guest, but I will tell you, you were definitely one of my mentors. And one thing I want to just give you specific feedback on is something that you did, and I know you did it intentionally. And I also carried it with my leadership style is positive reinforcement, very timely though. Instead of this generic attaboy, which was not your jam, you were very specific. So, if I had a good week or good quarter or good year, you'd be the first person to call me and be very specific on you had this, this, and this that you did that executed this. And I really appreciate you. And I didn't want the day to darken without telling you. I literally saved some of those voicemails for years
Oh,
And I don't think, leaders need to know these things because sometimes it's just our natural tendencies or DNA, and we don't really think about the impact it has on others. But I think timely feedback, both positive and negative, is so essential to great leadership because people like myself who want the feedback, even if sometimes it stings for the first 24 hours, they love it when it's timely. The worst person is when you show up to what intuitive called P&R, plan and review, and you dump a bunch of criticism on them that you could have given them throughout the entire quarter. And I'm not saying Intuitive did that. I'm just saying when you have these quarterly reviews, if you're
yeah.
just dumping all your feedback in this 1 hour setting, first of all, no one can digest that much feedback. But secondly, I just think it's way more effective. And it's, again, a nod to you and your leadership style is timely and just making it not personal. Either it's a praise or it's a reprimand, but either one, it's very timely, and then we just move on and go on to the next day and the next win or L that we take. But I can remember exactly where I was standing where you left me a message that meant so much to me. I think I sent it to both my parents, and
Oh,
I mean, just so you know, I probably
thank
never have
you.
told you this,
Yeah, that's
but
wonderful.
that is a big kudos to you and your leadership style. And I hope that continues throughout your life as a CEO as well. But
Oh, thank you,
Adam,
Steph.
thank you so
That
much.
makes my day.
Yeah. Well, it was
We
so
just do
fun to
our
have
best to try
you.
to help people, and look, I mean, the other thing is not a superpower, but you're a good example of this, and all the other people we've mentioned already that we worked with in the past is if you surround yourself with people better than you, it's going to be hard to not win in life
Right.
more often than you
Yep.
don't.
Yeah.
Um, I've always benefited from that. Is just trying to hire people better than me. It's a low bar to get over, but it's good to have really super talented people. And I've appreciated our friendship and the working relationship we have now with Tribe. I'll give you a plug back just so you know, if people haven't used Tribe in the past, the quality of the work that they produce, I think, is reflective in our website right now. So come back and check out our website and take a look, and you'll see the quality of the work that her and that Steph and her team do. That is incredible. It's a very customer focused organization, and that's what we appreciate about the ongoing relationship we have with you, Steph.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I was thrilled when we got your website published and even the evolution of your brand. I just love it. I love everything
Yeah,
about
our
it.
branding, I should say, that's really probably the big one.
And by the way, you were the one like, I don't really think we need to do a brand overhaul. I think we're good. And you're like, but I'm, gonna hold judgment until I see what you guys are thinking. But I think in hindsight, you can now reflect that like it just elevated your position in the market. I definitely think it matched the intellect of your company. And it was just fun to
I'm
be
so
a part of
happy you
that.
convinced me to do that.
Yeah, I
You and Mark
agree.
Grant, for sure, both
I
convinced
agree.
me
I
to do
agree. I
it.
mean, I think
Time
it
to
was a
make a
win.
change.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for being on today. Sit tight and stick around for a second. But again, thank you and really appreciate it. If you guys want to find Adam, he's on LinkedIn. We'll force him to be on it more, but he's on LinkedIn. And also, you can go to imrasurgical.com to find him. I'll put all of this in the show notes as well. But thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leader Podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, please take a moment to subscribe, share, and leave a comment so more listeners can find us. Interested in sharing your own story on Leader Podcast or looking to elevate your brand and marketing efforts with Tribe Agency? Visit us at tribeagency.org/contact to get in touch. We value your engagement and look forward to growing with you. Don't forget to follow Leader Podcast for more inspiring episodes like this. Thanks again and see you next time.